Does the President or the White House have any concerns that the extent to which the Israeli Prime Minister continued the war will affect the President's own ability to continue to defend Israel's right to defend itself? I know that's a little circular, but...
You mean domestically here,
Yes.
or?
Yes.
Well, first I would say that the President's set a clear objective from the beginning, which was to end the war, play any role we can ending the war, and bring it to a conclusion as quickly as possible. And at the beginning, that seemed highly unlikely, given there were thousands of rockets falling on Tel Aviv, and the Israelis were on a war footing and preparing for, by many reports, a ground invasion. So I would say what's important to look at and reflect on here is historic precedent and the fact that the conflict in 2014, many more lives were lost. Also, it went on for 51 days. So the President's view is that, and his view from the beginning was that through disciplined, intensive, and a disciplined, intensive, and quiet campaign of diplomacy, and one where we would lead coordination in the region, we could bring an end to the conflict more quickly than it was intended to be. And it's also important to remember that Hamas is a terrorist organization, that Israel, of course, continues to have the right to defend itself. But what's most important from now forward, in his view, is to contemplate where we go from here, Darlene. And certainly he talked yesterday about replenishing support for the Iron Dome. And our view is that saved hundreds of lives, maybe more than that, given the effectiveness. Also to support through the United Nations continued additional assistance in rebuilding Gaza. We've already, of course, restarted our assistance that was ended in 2018 through UNRWA, through the United States, but we'll work through the UN, and we also will remain engaged deeply with diplomatic conversations with leaders in the region. So, obviously, anyone here domestically will have to make their own decisions, but I would say that it's important to convey what our intention was, what we feel that we feel this was concluded as a result of the President's engagement and frankly discipline from the beginning, much faster than these conflicts have been in the past. Go ahead. Go ahead, Darlene. Go ahead.
We also heard this week a lot of Democrats shifting their tone on Israel. So is it time for the President or the White House or the United States to also perhaps start thinking about shifting the approach, its approach to Israel?
What shifting in what way?
You had a lot of Democrats who were frustrated that the President didn't call for a ceasefire immediately. That was one thing a lot of people were upset about. So, and the sort of, I don't want to say knee-jerk, but the U.S. position is that Israel has a right to defend itself. And there are a lot of Democrats who, I think, from what we heard them say this week, they don't necessarily buy into that. And so the thinking is there some shift in the approach to Israel?
Well, Darlene, I think the reason I answered it the way I did is because obviously we all shared an objective of bringing an end to the conflict. The President's view and his strategic approach and that of his team was that the best way to do that was not to call out our allies and partners, but was to remain closely coordinated and to work in lockstep, and at the right moment to convey it was time to wind it down. And that's exactly what he did. And now the conflict is concluded in 11 days. And frankly, he resisted calls to take an alternative approach that, in his view, would have had an alternative outcome. So that's why I answered it the way I did. Go ahead.